What's up, Warriors fans? It's your main man, Max, here with Warriors Latest. And after some of the stuff I just read, we got a decent amount to talk about. Now, I know I've talked about Jonathan Kuminga a lot this offseason because, let's be honest, he is the top trade asset the Warriors have right now going into next season. And he's going to draw a lot of interest. Now, I've talked about the main idea for him. You got to trade him for Kevin Durant, bring Durant back into the fold, and really run as hard as you can in that 2 year window that the Warriors have to win one more championship before the core really calls it a career. Like I've said multiple times, Steph's going to be 39, Draymond and Jimmy are going to be 37, and then KD is going to be 39 at the end of that 2 year window in 26 27. However, based on the market resetting, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But from the other stuff I've heard, it's still a decent possibility. Now, I've also talked about some of the other options like Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and how they may help with the Warriors moving forward, with Lauri being that big man who can shoot the three and really get the job done, messing with those post players that they've really had a lot of trouble with for years on end. And then John Collins being that large expiring contract who can really bang down low with some of the better bigs in the league and also stretch the floor from three, having almost hit 40% of his shots from downtown last season. And to be honest, that's amazing. But we have to look at the real issue. These are all contingent plans on certain things going right. Like Kevin Durant becoming available, the Suns not finding the right deal that they like in terms of dealing Durant to a team that he likes, and then him signing the extension. Lauri Markkanen, Danny Ainge lowering his asking price from that ridiculous blood drawing asking price that he usually goes for when trading a former All Star, or even John Collins, who may not fit the Warriors system strictly because he is a small ball center, which the Warriors like. But in order to win that title, they're going to have to get a bit bigger than just a 6'9 center. Yes, they can be faster, but if they really want to compete with the likes of Oklahoma City, the likes of the Mavericks when they make their bounce back next year, the likes of Minnesota, the likes of Houston, and maybe even Sacramento, should they bounce back from that terrible season last year, they're going to need that perennial big man to really help them out and create proper floor spacing in order to get the shots they need to win the games and continuously win games in the playoffs, which honestly they couldn't do. Now, that begs the question, what are the other options? Just hands down other options for Kuminga. And that means a simple sign and trade. And there has been a decent amount of interest with Kuminga. Now, we know that he's been inconsistent with his playing time, and that's due to a couple of factors. One, his role hasn't really been defined with the team, and he's been guarding multiple positions, doing well, but hasn't gotten those consistent minutes. He's shown flashes, but also shown a lot of inconsistency as well. And it can be frustrating to see that as a fan, but you see where Steve Kerr is coming from. He wants the guy who can just do a little bit of everything, where Kuminga has shown he's an ISO downhill type of player. He doesn't really shoot the three that well to the point where he could become a major asset with a championship Warriors team. Now, we know he was part of that Warriors team that won in 2022, but that was his rookie season. So I don't know if that counts as much. It's like saying, oh, James Wiseman has a lot of potential because he was part of that championship team in 22. And we look at how that turned out. He had a huge injury, and I believe is out for the next year as well, and is currently still a free agent. So I think it's safe to say we can call Wiseman a bust. But back to Kuminga. We have to look at Kuminga, worst case scenario, as a guy who can bring in assets via a sign-in trade. And there have been a few teams that have had interest in something like that, and I think it's worth talking about. Now, the two teams that are interested most of all are the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls. Now, they both have pieces that the Warriors can use, but let's see how the Warriors can make the best out of a bad situation. Now, with the Heat, you can get good pieces, but the question is, which good pieces can you get? And looking at it, the Warriors can get at least a couple of decent pieces that they could either use as depth or use in a potential trade later on. And any trade that's going to involve the Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga and the Heat, it's likely going to involve Duncan Robinson, bringing back Kyle Anderson, and maybe even Andrew Wiggins. Now, we both know what we got with Wiggins and Kyle Anderson. Anderson, solid bench player. He can contribute immediately to the Warriors, give them that Olympic rotation that they really like to thrive on. And they did thrive on it a little bit while they were playing with him before the Jimmy Butler trade, but we all saw what happened. Once Butler got there, it was the Butler team moving forward, and there was a complete change in chemistry and way that the Warriors offense run to where they got to one of the most dangerous teams going into the postseason. Yeah, they didn't really make that great of a run, but it just goes to show that they added by subtracting with losing guys like Wiggins and Anderson for a guy like Butler. And you look at it, bringing in another guy in that potential trade in Duncan Robinson, it adds a three-point shooting big. Now, let's be honest. Robinson is an inconsistent three-point shooter, but when he can knock it down, he can really knock it down. He'll just go off for 30 in a single night when you least expect it, and that's great. But it's not really something that's going to work long-term in the Warriors offense, but like I said, he brings in an asset that is an expiring contract, as well as being very good from the three-point line. And if the Warriors find ways to get him open, he can prove valuable in crunch time, as he's shown in those two runs with the Miami Heat to the finals. Even though they lost to the Lakers and even though they lost to the Nuggets, he still provided some decent three-point shooting. And that's something I'd like to see the Warriors bring in, because after what I saw against the Timberwolves when they couldn't hit water falling out of a boat after Steph went down, I think that's a good move in the right direction. Now, I know it's frustrating to see. It's like, oh, we're bringing back Wiggins. We're bringing back Kyle Anderson, maybe even Duncan Robinson, should the Warriors throw some extra things in there, or Kuminga signs for the max. Now, for the Heat, it gives them that potential star player, if they can't acquire Durant, to really pair with Bam and Tyler Hero. And that gives them a bit of a core trio that I really like. You got a shooter in Tyler Hero, you got a guy who can attack the basket relentlessly in Jonathan Kuminga, and a really tough center in Bam Adebayo. Now, that's good for them moving forward, and for the Warriors, it provides a lot of depth, which they lost when trading for Jimmy Butler. But now that they have something to work with, they may be a little more dangerous moving forward, and if things do not work out, they can combine those assets into a potential trade later on, and maybe bring in another star similar to what they did with Butler. And that could be that additional piece that gets the Warriors over the top. So it's a lose-win scenario for the Warriors. As worst case scenario, that things don't work out. Worst case scenario, it's bad for the team and hurts them. But best case scenario, they have something to trade. But speaking on that, the Heat aren't the only team that is interested in Kuminga, as the second major team that has shown interest has been the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Bulls are the more interesting of the two teams, as they have multiple players that they could trade, but none of them fit within what the current roster is about. Now, we look at Colby White. He's going to be the guy that sticks around the longest. Some of their young rookies, they're just going to stick around. However, they do have a lot of tradable assets. And the biggest one that I love to think of is Nikolai Vucevic. Now, we all know Vucevic. He's a multi-time All-Star with the Magic. Was part of the Bulls because they traded a lot for him. They expected to make that deep playoff run. But once Lonzo Ball went down, the wheels really fell off, and nobody really was able to get it together. But what he provides is that veteran big man to really dominate the post. Like we saw, as I said before, we saw it against the Wolves. They had no one big to match up with Rudy Gobert. We saw it against the Rockets when they had nobody big to match up with either Alperen Sengun or Steven Adams, somebody to be tough and really grab those rebounds. I remember watching that series, and it was tough to watch because you were watching Kevon Looney, you were watching Jonathan Kuminga, and Jimmy Butler fight for rebounds along with Draymond Green, and they were still having a tough time grabbing those rebounds. They had to give that extra effort. And that extra effort is just going to wear guys down in a long playoff run. If you're going deep into the playoffs, you don't want to wear them down in the first round of the series. And I think that did contribute to why they couldn't beat the Wolves in the second round. That first round series, the Warriors were up 3-1. Now I want you to think about that. And because the Rockets were younger and more athletic, they were able to force it to Game 7, where the Warriors' experience helped them win out. But bringing in a guy like Vucevic will really ease the burden of being overly aggressive on the offensive boards and allow them to save their energy for more different offensive attacks. You think about it as, say, a 1-2 post punch of Draymond Green along with Vucevic. That's pretty good in my mind. Now, you got to ask, who's going to be the other guy that would be involved in the Jonathan Kuminga trade? And it's likely going to be Lonzo Ball. And I love the irony of Lonzo going to Golden State, because one of the things I always will remember about Lonzo is when LeVar said that he's better than Steph Curry. And to be honest, that's funny to see how that played out. But this will give Lonzo a perfect opportunity to really bounce back. He's on an affordable contract with the Bulls right now, having re-signed for $20 million over 2 years. And you know what? That's not too bad for the Warriors moving forward. It gives them that playmaker and gives the opportunity for Lonzo to learn under one of the greatest point guards in history in Steph Curry. Yes, he may not become the player we all hoped he would be, but it will definitely be a lot better than what he's been so far. And it would be just an amazing story to see him really make that comeback and possibly even become the sixth man of the year. Let's not forget, remember when the Bulls first put that team together? It was Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, and Vucevic. And they were one of the best teams in the East until Lonzo went down. And when Lonzo went down, as we all know, the wheels fell off. So he's shown he can be that court general as a starter. But should his knees really bounce back, which, considering modern medicine, they should, he may make an impactful, or he may make his presence known and make a real impact on the offense. Say Steph is off the court, he's leading the offense in ways that some of the other backup point guards like Moody or Pods haven't really been able to. And he's had that pressure on him since he was a kid. We've all seen how LeVar's put high amounts of pressure on his kids, and it's really paid off for them. Yes, he's not gotten those opportunities because of injuries, but when he has gotten those opportunities, he has shined in those opportunities. Now, let's get to the bottom line here. We all want to see the Warriors do well. I do, you do, and I think they're going to make the right moves. As Joe Lacob said, this is a business, and even though he likes Kuminga, he wants to do what's best for the team in order to win one more title before they have to do a complete reset. So Kuminga is going to get traded. Now, best case scenario, things go bad for the Suns. They can't get the offer they want from some of the teams that KD desires to go to, that they explore other options and they don't find it, and the trade option, looking for the trade, goes through July 1st, where the Warriors are able to make that move and acquire him. Next best case scenario, Lauri Markkanen, price goes down. They decide, all right, let's go after Lauri. Another scenario, you know what? John Collins looks good. Let's make it a simple 1-for-2 trade and go from there. But worst case scenario is still a pretty good scenario, because worst case scenario, all right, say he signs an offer sheet with the Heat or the Bulls, you want to at least get something back. And if you're getting something back, you want to make sure you're always building depth, because when you have depth, that's going to help you long term in the playoffs, making those deep runs and keeping those legs fresh. And if we've learned anything about this Warriors dynasty, having just celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the beginning of the dynasty with that 2014-15 title, depth matters most, because that original Warriors team was very deep, and it was that bench that really helped them beat that Cavs team after going down in the series against a tough LeBron James who wanted to win that title for the Cavs. But you know what? Guys coming off the bench like David Lee, Festus Ezeli, Kareem Rush, they were able to push the Warriors over the top because they had that depth, and they were able to know your role and be like next man up. And if the Warriors want to win, they got to have that depth. And for Warriors Latest, I'm your main man, Max, and as always, go Dubs.